Are diamond engagement rings a ripoff? Engagement rings are considered the ultimate declaration of love, with the relatively small piece of jewelry being representative of a couple's commitment, unity, and trust, or at least that's what you'd hope. In modern times, it's become standard practice for an engagement ring to feature a large stone, usually a diamond. But do you know how this expensive tradition came to be? In today's video, we're going to be talking about all things engagement ring, including its ancient Roman roots, the evolution of different ring styles, the popularization of diamonds, the industry's negative impact, and how the media has manipulated us all into believing that materialism is a sign of true love. Let's get into it. The practice of couples giving one another rings to symbolize their union is theorized to have begun with the ancient Egyptians, who might have made their rings out of reeds or hemp, with the circle signifying their endless bond. The practice is believed to have then been adopted by the ancient Greeks years later, around the time of Alexander the Great, where they were possibly made out of leather, bone, or ivory. It's only in the time of the ancient Romans that the tradition's existence is less debatable, as various written accounts and archaeological discoveries mention the practice directly. Unlike the Egyptians or Greeks, early Roman engagement rings were made out of metal, allowing them to stand the test of time, with rings even being found in the ruins of Pompeii. Initially, iron was the metal of choice, as gold was reserved only for certain public officials, but the right to wear gold was eventually extended to common citizens. As early as 200 BC, Roman women were given 2 rings when they were betrothed, one that was simpler, that would be worn while attending household duties, and a second, fancier ring that was worn out in public. Because yes, even back then, people wanted to show off how much they had spent on their engagement ring. Initially a part of a woman's dowry, these rings came to signify that a contract had been made and were the physical manifestation of a wife's loyalty towards her husband. As is often the case, the jewelry worn by women of higher classes were more elaborate, with their betrothal bands being adorned with engravings or small stones. The idea of wearing a ring on a specific finger on a specific hand is also theorized to have come about during this time period, with some claiming that the ancient Romans believed that there was a vein in the 4th finger that ran directly to the heart, a theory that was referred to as vena amoris, the vein of love. This has since been proven to be a myth, but the romantic tradition can still be seen today. Even after the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, rings continued to be exchanged between couples, with the Visigoths, a group of Germanic people that controlled a good deal of Western Europe through the 5th to 8th centuries, officially stating in their Visigothic code that the exchanging and acceptance of rings during a betrothal ceremony was symbolic of a promise that under no circumstances could be broken. Pope Nicholas I later solidified the practice within the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church in 860 AD, proclaiming that an engagement ring was the physical representation of the pact between the betrothed as well as a symbol of their faith in God. This custom was also present in Jewish ceremonies, with a solid metal band being presented to the bride as part of her betrothal, as it was an object whose value was easy to ascertain. While different stones had been incorporated into engagement rings for centuries, the first diamond engagement ring on record can be traced back to 1477, when Archduke Maximilian of Austria proposed to Mary of Burgundy. Because diamonds were incredibly rare at the time, and remarkably expensive, they didn't catch on for engagement rings for several centuries, with most royals opting for other precious gemstones like amethysts, rubies, and emeralds, while everyday folk continued to use simple metal bands. This was the standard for much of the Middle Ages, but around the 14th century, we began to see more elaborate styles of rings grow in popularity amongst those who could afford them. This included signet rings, which had unique designs engraved into them that were used to seal documents. Being used in some form as early as ancient Egypt, over the years, signet rings had become associated with nobility and power, so having one as your engagement ring was quite the statement. Gimel rings became popular in the centuries that followed, especially in England and Germany, with Martin Luther marrying his wife in 1525 with said ring style, setting a precedent for other Protestants. Made up of multiple bands, an engaged couple would wear one each before looping them together to use as a single wedding ring, being symbolic of how they had joined together as one. Posy rings, which featured short poetic inscriptions, were an alternate ring style that became more commonplace around this time period as well, and were used as a general gift between lovers. These metal-focused rings remained in fashion for several centuries, but in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, people began clamoring for more extravagant engagement rings. At the time, there was a war going on between old money families, those who had inherited their wealth for generations and often had aristocratic connections, versus the nouveau riche, who had risen from a lower social class more recently. This battle resulted in both sides exorbitantly displaying their wealth for the entire world, a practice known as conspicuous consumption, which could be seen in everything from their parties to their houses to their clothing. Of course, engagement rings were no exception. The styles of 19th century engagement rings were heavily influenced by Queen Victoria, who popularized numerous wedding trends that have become staples today, like white dresses. Her snake engagement ring, which would be considered quite quirky today, featured emeralds, the Queen's birthstone, and it became popular for Victorian-era engagement rings to contain the bride's birthstone. The Queen also had a penchant for diamonds, with the stone appearing on her crowns, necklaces, and rings. Members of the upper class emulated this by incorporating clusters of small diamonds into other gem-dominant engagement rings, but large diamonds were still fairly rare, and it was uncommon for them to be the main feature of a ring. That all changed in the late 1860s following the discovery of diamonds in South Africa, which prompted a period of mass migration to the area known as the Diamond Rush. Initially, individual diggers of any background held ownership, but as production grew, ownership and labor practices quickly became divided racially. The industry was eventually monopolized by English colonialist Cecil Rhodes in 1889, with his company, De Beers Consolidated Mines, becoming the sole owner of all diamond operations in South Africa. Because of this monopoly, Rhodes was able to negotiate the sale of a fixed quantity of diamonds at an agreed-upon cost, regulating worldwide supply and demand in order to maintain a set price. This allowed him to artificially inflate the price of diamonds as he saw fit, even when other factors should have dictated that they be cheaper. Rhodes would become Prime Minister in 1890, something attributed to his hold over the diamond industry, and to help with the expansion of the British Empire, he made it increasingly difficult for native Africans to vote by tripling wealth requirements, redrawing voting lines to disqualify rural areas, and instilling literacy conditions. In case it wasn't already clear, he was a terrible person. Around this time, other companies began to make a name for themselves in the engagement ring world. This included Tiffany & Co., which was founded in 1837 as a stationery and fancy goods emporium. In the 1850s, the company pivoted their focus to jewelry and other metal goods, and in the 1870s, they developed an association with high-quality diamonds. In the 1880s, the company trademarked a design known as the Tiffany setting, which became a signature of their engagement rings. The Tiffany setting featured a solitaire diamond held by 6 prongs on a single band, allowing the stone to catch more light and making it more practical for everyday wear, unlike prior styles that had a diamond sit lower on the finger. The design became immensely popular, and getting your engagement ring from Tiffany & Co. was something every woman dreamed of, a sentiment that remains today thanks to the rom-com genre. By the turn of the 20th century, engagement rings had not only become common practice in the United States, but were almost a requirement, with the Chicago Tribune reporting in 1904, quote, "The engagement ring is getting to be so indispensable to engagements in this day and age that the girl who admits her betrothal without at the same time shyly exposing the diamond solitaire that twinkles on her little left hand is extremely rare and hard to find. No diamond, no engagement might be set down as the modern watchword in matters of the heart." The same article also noted that the price of diamonds had risen 30 to 40%, which was artificially inflated by the diamond industry as American women preferred diamonds to colored gemstones. Around this time, platinum, a newly invented metal, gained popularity in jewelry due to its flexibility, which could be crafted into intricate designs that were all the rage because of the Art Nouveau movement. In the 1920s, Art Deco-inspired designs replaced the elaborate styles of the Edwardian era, featuring combinations of diamonds and colored gemstones, along with angular lines. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, there was an understandable shift towards more modest engagement ring styles that featured smaller stones, if any. In 1939, De Beers partnered with the Gemological Institute of America to develop the industry's first universal grading system for diamonds, the 4 Cs. The first C, cut, plays a crucial role in a stone's sparkle, brilliance, and fire. It refers not only to its shape, but also its proportions, angles, and symmetry. While most modern-day shoppers think of the cut as simply the shape of the stone, it can also have a notable effect on a gem's beauty. The second C, color, unsurprisingly refers to the color of the gemstone. For colorless diamonds, they should effectively be transparent with no off-yellow cloudiness.
This
is, a topaz?
a topaz? Among my jewels? Are you mad? It's a yellow diamond of the first quality. You'll have to go a long way to see one like it.
This grading system also encompasses fancy colored diamonds, such as pink, blue, green, brown, black, purple, orange, and green. The third C, clarity, refers to imperfections that can be found inside of a diamond. Whether they occur naturally or are made during the cutting process, these imperfections can vary in size, color, position, quantity, and shape, and can obstruct the passage of light through the stone. Carat, the final C, measures the weight of the diamond. The most easily discernible of the 4 C's, a diamond's carat value is directly proportional to its mass. However, just because 2 diamonds have the same weight, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same value, as that's dependent on the value of the remaining C's. Harry Winston Incorporated, named after its founder who was colloquially referred to as the King of Diamonds, made history in 1944 by loaning actress Jennifer Jones diamond earrings for that year's Academy Awards. In the years that followed, it became increasingly common for celebrities to sport jewelry loaned to them by various companies, with both parties benefiting from the exchange. With diamonds being the most frequently loaned out, it developed a reputation for being the stone of the stars, which made their prices soar even higher as the public attempted to replicate what they'd seen on the red carpet and on the big screen. While diamonds had become more common over the course of the 20th century, they were by no means the norm, as rubies, emeralds, pearls, and sapphires continued to be featured in engagement ring designs into the 1940s. De Beers had been advertising diamonds in an assortment of ways since they'd been founded in order to manipulate consumer demand, but one of their most effective marketing strategies came in 1947. Created by copywriter Francis Garrity, the slogan, "A diamond is forever," became a staple of the company's advertising, and implied that diamonds were not only an investment of sorts, but were the ultimate symbol of your partner's one-of-a-kind love. By positioning diamonds as a status symbol that proved your monetary and romantic worth, this campaign successfully pressured the public into purchasing them for their engagement rings, with the style seeing a surge of popularity that eventually set the standard in just a few short years. As a result, colored stones were instead relegated for more casual occasions, despite the fact that in many cases, diamonds were more common. Before the release of the campaign, less than 10% of engagement rings given in the US featured diamonds, but by the 1960s it had grown to over 50%, and by the end of the century to 80%. Considered one of the best marketing slogans of the entire 20th century, De Beers' strategy would greatly impact the diamond industry, with their sales in the United States alone increasing from $23 million to $2.1 billion between 1939 and 1979. Notable figures of the 1950s and 60s, like Elizabeth Taylor, Jackie Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, Princess Margaret, and Grace Kelly, were credited for making diamond engagement rings even more of a coveted item amongst young women, not only because they were in romantic relationships with high-profile men that were positioned as aspirational, but because they were also massively influential in the fashion world, effectively giving diamonds a chic stamp of approval. Audrey Hepburn helped popularize the 3-metal Trinity ring by Cartier, which was vaguely reminiscent of the Gimel rings of the 16th century. Princess Margaret and First Lady Jackie Kennedy, royalty of their respective countries, helped repopularize colored stone accents, while Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe, some of the biggest sex symbols of the era, epitomized a more is more mindset when it came to their betrothal bling. In the 1970s, brides began to match their engagement rings to their wedding bands, creating a coordinated double-stacked set that was inspired by the sense of individuality that defined the era. Instead of simply adding more stones to the ring like prior decades, the actual band became more elaborate, sometimes even mixing metals. Of course, diamonds were the stone of choice, oftentimes even being the main selling point. Because of her supposed fairy tale romance, Princess Diana set numerous wedding trends of the 1980s, including gigantic dresses and colored engagement rings. Yellow gold became the metal of choice during this time period, while large stones and baguette sides mirrored the bold spirit of the decade. Similar to the gaudy Gilded Age, which saw the upper class of the Victorian era flaunting their wealth, the 1980s saw the rich get even richer, resulting in it being dubbed the Decade of Greed. Seeing this increase in conspicuous consumption, De Beers introduced another engagement-focused ad campaign, which told men they needed to spend at least 2 months of their salary on a diamond engagement ring. These ads effectively put a price on love by urging shoppers to remember that thousands of dollars was nothing compared to a lifetime of happiness. This sort of pony-up sentiment trickled down into other engagement ring advertisements of the time period, resulting in the widespread acceptance of the 2-month rule. In hindsight, I'm surprised that this campaign wound up being as influential as it was, as I personally find the message to be kind of depressing. Not only are the women positioned as shallow and demanding, but the men seem desperate and insecure, and overall it just feels like a rather pessimistic way to view relationships.
You love her. You cherish her. But let's face it, she's a lot.
This negativity seemed to mirror society at large, with 50% of marriages ending in divorce in the 1980s, a record high which women were routinely blamed for, even though in reality it was just that we were finally at a point where we weren't royally screwed if we got a divorce. In contrast to the prior decade, the 1990s saw a rise in more minimalist engagement rings, resulting in an increase in affordable jewelry retailers like Zales, Jared, and Kay Jewelers, with the latter introducing the tagline, "Every kiss begins with K" in 1997, which became one of the most recognized in history. These brands, while lacking the prestige of Tiffany & Co., Cartier, Harry Winston, or Van Cleef, were much more accessible to the average consumer, not only in regard to price point, but they could also be found at any mall in America. Although they're sometimes ridiculed for being cheap or cheesy, there actually isn't a huge difference in quality between the jewelry from these brands and those with higher price points. It's mainly marketing at the end of the day. In the 2000s, celebrities began to boast bigger and bigger engagement rings, with numerous rings reportedly being valued at over $1 million. Jennifer Lopez and Paris Hilton popularized colored diamonds during this time period, a trend which alluded to the colored gemstones of earlier decades, but with the status of a diamond.
What is it? Let me see.
It's a diamond.
Fucking thing's brown.
Man, champagne. It's the newest thing. It's so in culture. It's a trending diamond. Champagne.
Yeah, no, I heard about this. It's very big in the diamond trade. They're trying to create a new market.
It was around this time that De Beers' hold over the diamond supply chain lessened, decreasing from 85% to 63%, which is still a ridiculous amount, but hey, at least it's an improvement. The 2008 recession greatly impacted engagement ring trends, with many people opting for smaller, more affordable diamonds. Flaunting wealth during this time period was perceived as tacky and insensitive, and as a result, on average, men spent 50% less on engagement rings than before the economic downturn. History repeated itself in 2010 when Prince William proposed to Kate Middleton with his mother, Princess Diana's sapphire ring, sparking a resurgence in vintage-style engagement rings that lasted throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s. While many couples today are still on the 2-month salary De Beers train, we are seeing an increase in alternative options. The majority of natural diamonds that are distributed worldwide originate from Africa, and the industry has had an incredibly detrimental effect on the region. Besides the actual diamond mining process negatively impacting the environment, it's also exploitative, with many companies severely underpaying its workers. The diamond trade has also been linked to the violent conflicts throughout Africa. For decades, children have been forced to mine diamonds in active war zones, with these blood diamonds being sold to fund armed groups, continuing the violent cycle. Although the diamond industry has a certification process to ensure diamonds are conflict-free, they've put even more of a premium on the product, pushing many consumers towards blood diamonds while still managing to profit themselves. I can already see the comments going, well, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but I want to emphasize that a diamond engagement ring is not a necessity by any definition of the word. There are other options out there, like moissanite, lab-grown diamonds, or vintage diamonds, which are not only more affordable than mined diamonds, but are more ethical as well. Sure, you could argue that these alternatives aren't worth as much, but as we've said over and over again throughout this video, diamonds aren't really worth what you're paying for anyways, which the industry is well aware of. Just try and resell a diamond ring and see what you get for it. Don't let the ads trick you. they are not a rarity, nor are they an investment. You're way better off buying gold if you're looking for something that will retain value, which is exactly what I did when I got engaged. Over the years, almost every aspect of marriage has been commodified, starting with a diamond engagement ring and ending with a party that threatens to put you into debt. These companies will use anything at their disposal to make you feel like crap about not spending more money. They pick at our insecurities and prompt us to live beyond our means. Buy these creams so you won't have wrinkles. Buy this car so your neighbors will be jealous. And sadly, engagement rings have become another materialistic way to prove yourself to others, when it should just be about the love between you and your partner. Now, this video might have made me sound like a negative Nancy, but I promise I'm not anti-engagement ring. I just want to shed some light on why a diamond ring isn't as big of a deal as the media and society makes it out to be. Just get what makes you happy, even if it's a ring pop. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.